All right, ladies and gentlemen, I've been meaning to make a video on this subject, and I apologize for not getting around to it sooner. Obviously, it's been out for a few days now, but I wanted to give my take on it because I just think this is the most insane thing that I've seen in quite a while. Now, granted, it is from IGN, so it's really not that insane when you think about it because you can pretty much expect this from IGN these days. But the reason why I think it's insane is because this is the same company that gave Resident Evil 5 a glowing review when it first came out, and now they are suddenly attacking the game, calling it outdated, and basically saying it's extremely racist. So we have an article here from IGN that essentially says that this is the Resident Evil game that cannot and should not be remade for a multitude of reasons. They do admittingly go into the gameplay aspect, some of which I do agree with, but obviously the game is a sign of its times. But then they completely destroy their entire decently made argument when they start talking about racism. They literally go down the rabbit hole, and it's like, who the hell is this person that is talking about racism, and what did you do with the first person that was talking about the game? This is how they get you, ladies and gentlemen. IGN gets you with the initial conversation, and they throw in their ideology. And again, I want to be very clear before we get into this article. They gave this game a massively glowing review, 9.3 out of 10. IGN gave Resident Evil 5 when it first came out in March 5th of 2009. If you look at their verdict, there is not a single mention of racism anywhere in this article. If you look through the actual review itself, there is not a single mention of anything related to racism. This entire thing is just about the game itself. So it goes to show the ideology has changed drastically over at IGN and mainstream gaming industries as a whole. So let's get into this article from IGN. But of course, before we do, if you are new here, just consider hitting that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it, and like the video to push us out into that YouTube algorithm. It says a faithful remake of Resident Evil 5 would break Capcom's 7-year streak of brilliant survival horror. Now, I don't know if I would necessarily call it a 7-year streak. Obviously, they had some hits, but they also had some fails along the way as well. But that's going to be up to the person who's playing it and deciding whether or not they enjoy it. But it's been mostly remakes they've been doing. And then obviously they did Resident Evil 7, which everybody loved, and Resident Evil Village, what a lot of people liked, but they had some issues with. But still, overall, the reception was pretty positive. It says all this is to say that a faithful remake of Resident Evil 5 would break Capcom's 7-year streak of brilliant survival horror games. It's telling that series' reset point. Resident Evil 7 was a reinvention of the very first game, a haunted house that grew ever larger as you unlock new rooms by solving its puzzles. Clever reinventions of this base conceit is the key to Resident Evil's success, be that dropping an unstoppable force into the house's corridors or expanding the scope of the house. Its corridors are streets and its rooms are houses. In Resident Evil Village, Resident Evil 5's stage-driven structure is simply inferior to this design. A modern recreation of it would only further highlight its flaws, especially coming in such close proximity to the masterclass like the remake of Resident Evil 2. Remakes can, of course, completely redefine the structure of their source material. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, for example, is recognizably an updated version of the classic RPG, but its world design and gameplay mechanics are a world apart from the 1997 original. And so you could argue that Resident Evil 5 is actually the Resident Evil most in need of a remake. A whole new environmental structure and scenario design that reins in the action and dials up the horror would bring it in line with Capcom's other remakes. But here's the best part, you ready? But all of this doesn't account for Resident Evil 5's most notorious problem, racism. That's clearly it, ladies and gentlemen. Great choice of picture, by the way. The black guy eating the white guy, I guess that's okay, that's allowed, but God forbid it's the other way around. This is clearly going to derail into an absolute leftist shilling article of just psychopath. I really don't know what word to use other than it's going to be insane. So let's read it. Set in a fictional West African country, which, again, fictional, right? Fictional. So it's not real. Resident Evil 5's primary antagonists are black people. Yes, technically it's the Ouroboros virus that protagonist Chris Redfield's fighting, but the parasite's host is depicted as a nation of mobs and primitives who are violent even before their infection. So hold on. Wait a second. So Resident Evil 5's primary antagonists are black people. And Like, why is that a bad thing? I don't understand. Like, what is with these white liberals, which, by the way, a white liberal wrote this entire article. So yeah, that's not shocking. But why is it these white liberals just in their mind, they can't seem to grasp the idea of a black guy being a bad guy? Like, they just won't ever admit it. They won't ever like it. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a great written bad guy. They still won't like it. They don't like the idea of black people being evil. They consider it stereotypical because they themselves believe black people to be subpar and bad. That is what they believe. They shill and they shill and they shill to hide the closets to hide the skeletons in their own closets that they have. I promise you, these white liberals are not your friends. They absolutely look down on you. They want to marginalize you. They want to keep you down, and they want to keep you where they can control you. That's essentially what they want to do. Now, again, he's being very clear. Ouroboros virus, actually, it's a parasite. But I mean, we're not really concerned with that. That protagonist, Chris Redfield, is fighting, but the parasite's host is depicted as a nation of mobs and primitives, which again, West Africa, there are a lot of primitive tribes and whatnot. Like you're mad about the actual real depiction of certain African tribes. And then the funny thing is, let's be real, they're actually the victims, right? So you're talking about wanting to tell an empathetic story, and we're going to get to that. But it is an empathetic story. They are the victims. A white man is controlling a massive organization that is testing a deadly parasite on a group of poor, primitive people in West Africa. That sounds like a fantastic story to tell for someone like yourself who wants to praise black people and bring down white people. At least I thought anyway. Intentionally or not, Resident Evil 5 positions Africa as the Dark Continent, an uncivilized world harboring a diseased population that needs gutting down via Western intervention in the name of global security. This is a reach, ladies and gentlemen. This is a massive reach. This is literally seeing what you want to see. That's what this person is doing. They saw in this game this entire context right here, and now they're trying to say that's the truth. No, it's not. It's not. West Africa, or Africa as a whole, is a gigantic continent. There is multiple different places in Africa that you can visit, obviously. Some are going to be upscale. Some are going to be poor and downscale. Some are even going to be primitive. Some are going to be tribal. But guess what? If you are a corporation, an evil corporation who is trying to test out a parasite on humans, what are you more likely going to go after? Are you going to go after the developed areas of Africa that are more wealthy, have better infrastructure, or are you going to go after the fucking primitive tribes, you idiot? The ones who can't do anything against it, the ones who don't know any better. You're going to go after the tribes. That just makes more sense. You are so angry over your liberal beliefs that you actually aren't paying attention to what the story is being told here. This insensitive treatment of people of color was hotly debated even as early as Resident Evil 5's debut trailer, with writers such as Nagai Kroll and Stephen Totillo pointing out the game's uncomfortable post-colonial imagery. The arguments and think pieces continued well into the game's release window, with IGN's own former editor-in-chief Hillary Goldstein having also wrestled with the subject. Yeah, well, where was that in your review? Where was this in your review? If this game is so racist, why'd you give it a 9.3? Why'd you give it a 9.3 out of 10? You had all these problems with the gameplay aspects. You had all these problems with racism, and yet you gave it a glowing 9.3 out of 10. Either you got paid for it, which, I mean, you're going to have to go down that rabbit hole if you want to admit it, or you had no problem with it. You guys had zero problems with it. You only have a problem with it now because your liberal politics tell you to have a problem with it. In the 2020s, in a post-Black Lives Matter world, there is only one acceptable response to a white man shooting waves of Africans for an entire video game. No. Why? Why no? Why no? If you had a black protagonist and he was mowing down white dudes, would you be saying the same thing? If it was a black protagonist, he was mowing down Latinos, would you have the same exact mindset? Or if it was a black protagonist mowing down a bunch of black people, would you have the same argument? No, because the shit happens in Chicago every single day, bro. Like, what are we talking about? You are such... Man, these people, I really want to call them a tourist at this point. I want to call them a tourist because that's how you're acting. You're acting like a tourist. You have a problem with a white dude mowing down a bunch of black people, but I guarantee you'd have no problems with any other reverse scenario. You are such a fucking loser. Remakes may be able to redefine their source material, but there's only so many changes you can make until it's not a remake at all. I'm not even going to bother with this loser anymore. He's obviously a tourist, ladies and gentlemen. Ultimately, Resident Evil 5 does have some gameplay issues, yes, but it's the farthest thing from a racist story. If you think it's a racist story, that means you and of yourself are racist because you're seeing everything through the eyes of racism, because that's how you view black people. You want to marginalize them. You want to keep them down. You want to keep them under the whip and chains. You want to keep them under a place where you can control them. That's maybe what you want to do, but they are free as hell to do whatever the fuck they want to do. And it's very clear that you think so low of them that a Resident Evil game is considered racist. What a fucking loser. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy it. If you did, consider leaving me a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, comment, let me know what you thought, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.